Good afternoon and most welcome to 1414. We continue with the world of perception and it's closing to the end. The first time I finish off a book, almost did it with Lee Smolin and Roberto Anger's A Single Universe. The very last I read is well worth repeating. According to Joachim Gasquet, Cézanne said that the painter takes hold of a fragment of nature and makes it entirely painting. Braque put it even more clearly when 30 years ago he wrote that painting does not strive to reconstitute an anecdote, but rather to constitute a pictorial event. So painting does not imitate the world, but is a world of its own. This means that in our encounter with a painting, at no stage are we sent back to the natural objects. Similarly, when we experience a portrait aesthetically, its resemblance to the model is of new importance. It would take us too long to investigate here. Under the circumstances, painters in general tend not to fabricate the kind of non-existent poetic objects that some have produced on occasion. Suffice it to say, that even when painters are working with real objects, their aim is never to evoke the object itself, but to create on the canvas a spectacle which is sufficient unto itself. The distinction which is often made between the subject of the painting and the manner of the painter is untenable because as far as aesthetic experience is concerned, the subject consists entirely in the manner in which the grape, pipe or pouch of tobacco is constituted by the painter on the canvas. Does this mean that in art, form alone matters and not what is said? Not in the slightest. I mean that form and content, what is said and the way in which it is said, cannot exist separately from one another. Indeed, I am doing no more than taking note of an obvious truth. If I can get a sufficiently clear idea of an object or tool that I have never seen from a description of its function, at least in general terms, by contrast, no analysis however good can give me even the vaguest idea of a painting I have never seen in any form. So in the presence of a painting, it is not a question of my making ever more references to the subject, to the historical event, if there is one, which gave rise to the painting. rather as in the perception of things themselves. It is a matter of contemplating, of perceiving the painting by way of the silent signals which come at me from every part. Which emanate from the traces of paint set down on the canvas, until such time as all in the absence of reason and discourse come to form a tightly structured arrangement in which one has the distinct feeling that nothing is arbitrary. Even if one is unable to give a rational explanation of this. Cinema has yet to provide us with many films that are works of art from start to finish. Its infatuation with stars, the sensationalism of the zoom, the twists and turns of plot, and the intrusion of pretty pictures and witty dialogue are all tempting pitfalls for films which chase success and in so doing eschew properly cinematic means of expression. While these reasons do explain why hitherto there have scarcely been any films that are entirely filmic. We can nevertheless get a glimpse of how such a work would look. Sorry, I got some cardamom stuck in my throat. The danger of cardamom coffee. We shall see that, like all works of art, such a film would also be something that one would perceive. Beauty, when it manifests itself in cinematography, lies not in the story itself, which could quite easily be recounted in prose, and still less in the ideas which this story may evoke, nor indeed does it lie in the tics, mannerisms, and devices that serve to identify a director. For their influence is no more decisive than that of a writer's favorite words. What matters is the selection of episodes to be represented, and in each one the choice of shots that will be featured in the film, the length of time allotted to these elements, the order in which they are to be presented, the sound or words with which they are or are not to be accompanied. Taken together, all these factors contribute to form a particular overall cinematographical rhythm. When cinema has become a longer established facet of our experience, we will be able to devise a sort of logic, grammar, or stylistics of the cinema which tell us on the basis of our knowledge of existing works, the precise weight to accord to each element in a typical structural grouping, in order that it can take its place there harmoniously. But as in the case with all such rule books where art is concerned, It could only ever serve to make explicit the relationships which already exist in successful completed works. And to inspire other reasonable attempts. So, the creators of the future, just like those of today, will still have to discover new relationships without being guided to them. Then, as now, the viewer will experience the unity and necessity of the temporal progression in a work of beauty without ever forming a clear idea of it. And this last is to be reread. The viewer will experience the unity and necessity of the temporal progression in a work of beauty without ever forming a clear idea of it. That temporal progression is the movement. And if you try to get a clear idea of it, I do a wave here. If you want to have clarity there, the flow will stop. In artificial intelligence, Robert Pfeiffer, the Swiss engineer, shows that only movement is capable of carrying an infinity of information. It is complex enough, and I often get back to those because they show the true nature of presencing, or what is. It is a movement that can learn. It can change its habits. For the movement, there is also planning, looking ahead. Gazing into the future. You can compare the movement to the broadened vision, where I am sitting here taking in more of where I am, not narrowing, but having a panoramic view. Taking in more, and that is impossible if you ask for clarity here. To ask for a description of a painting will stop the movement and turn it into a singularity, a distinction. That, my friends, carry less understanding, knowledge. It's similar to a very compressed vision. Where you single out one particular aspect. Almost like what you do in a microscope, where you use a lot of light to see differences, to depict something extra clear. Need to be done sometimes, but if you go and use this mode of a reversed pair of binoculars to the world, you would lose out. Instead of clarity, the vision becomes dimmed out, strained. Specific widening perception is what Merleau-Ponty is pointing to. Where the whole, everything, is entire. And as Braque said, when the painting is a painting, it encompasses everything. But as a representation, it is narrowed down. It's the idea of you are not there in the viewing of the painting, but it is put somewhere else, which creates this distance, alienation. Heidegger calls it Fremdschaft, if I remember correctly. In another episode, we discussed how Heidegger perceived Wittgenstein and said that he sounded eerie, distant, not sane, in the manner of encompassing, presencing sanity. It's a particular vision of hardened eyes looking for things to zoom into, discern, and exclude what's around them. Ian McGilchrist calls that the hardened gaze of the left hemisphere. A gaze, when taken to its extreme, will end up in schizophrenia. The inability of perceiving the movement. Also here, very important is the aesthetic, the delightful, does not exclude what's pertinent, informative, and knowledgeable. The fractal movement is beauty, and it doesn't reject aestheticism or wholeness or pleasure. Both are present, although contradictory. I would say it's also a kind of difference from the inside. A softer gaze, but a softer inside. A Stimmung. Merleau-Ponty's message here goes much further than just art, paintings. It goes to a core understanding that is established in modern day, that the aesthetic has nothing to do with what is practical, functional, and good. Many years ago, I went to the British Museum of Industrial Machines. It sounded like something as far from art and pleasure you can come. But I saw in that exhibition exquisite, decorable machines. Steam engines, the spinning jenny, sewing machines, and they were decorated. And I remember from the vision I had, my Stimmung, I saw them as extras, unnecessary decoration on what already had its telos to produce cloth, textile, a thread, and that the decoration was like the cover of a mobile, not part of the structure, or the design was something extra. I think modern technology could give that impression, where design is separate from the telos of the practical. What you do with the thing has become monetized, generalized. And we start to perceive that the aesthetic is not a proper essence of what is working, what is good, what is healthy. It's an additive, a supplément. The world of perception is a very soft pointing to the understanding that these two aspects also are deeply connected. That by, in your mind, trying to discern the pleasure of the painting, or, as in my case, the machine, from its formal function, will cause a rupture in the weave of presencing. And that rupture is an illusion. Aesthetics is not parted from the good, from the goal. I'd say they are complementary, connected in the most wondrous way. And it's in a way shame that art has become something disjunct to reality, not in reality. but like an extra boon or gift. It is most definitely in perception, vivid, doing its fantastic thing and informing the telos, the purpose, making it more telling, even the hard parts of technology. So underneath this disjunction or polarization between the aesthetic and the practical or rational, if you like, there is an underlying unity. Opening up to that will make us more wholesome in our experiencing. See, my dear colleague Kalle here has something to add. There you go. Almost working whiteboard pen.
No, that's with me. This is, yes, with me. Can I buy? It's interesting that the book speaks so much about art, but the cover is not really an artwork. I don't know what you would say about it, but it's a little bit.
It's an effect of a stroboscope.
Mm-hmm.
Set of machinery. Yeah, it is.
No, it's pity that. No, I think like you, we should return a little bit to arts and crafts movement. Let's make arts and crafts movement great again. I agree completely. And I would like to repeat this very same sentence that is on page 99 that you emphasized. It was yes. Then as now, the viewer will experience the unity and necessity of the temporal procession in a work of beauty, without ever forming a clear idea of it. Page 99. That's very important. And you mentioned earlier this guy that we write down, Rolf Pfeiffer. I would recommend, and you would also recommend, to watch his TED talk where he stands with a robot. And as you said, he shows that intelligence or memory of this robot is in the movement. That's very clearly put. I don't know if you see it. Let me see it here. Okay, so memory is in the movement, and we could also say intelligence is in the movement. And it's typical that this Rolf Pfeiffer, that he went to Tokyo and Shanghai to work. He was from Zurich, I think he continued with Zurich, I don't know exactly, but now he's retired. We cannot understand, it's foreign to us. In Japan and Tokyo, they understand artificial intelligence or intelligence things in the movement. They are more open to that. So absolutely we need. And I would like to make a pun. Pfeiffer, so in German it means Whistler. Can you see the camera? Okay, Whistler, okay, anyhow, it's nothing. So to help you to remember the name Pfeiffer. So his name is Whistler, and it means also like a pipe player. And why do I mention the name, the meaning of his name? It is like if you would ask a pipe player or a whistler, what does your whistling mean? That is, okay, of course you could define it conceptually, but it's a little bit, I don't know, stupid to ask what does your play mean? Of course you can analyze it's a romantic piece or it's a like a march, or of course you can define it, but it's a little bit simplistic. So it's really true what you say, Hans, or what Merleau-Ponty says, that the view will experience the unity and necessity of the temporal progression, like in whistling or whatever, by playing. In a work of beauty, without ever having a clear idea of it. Yes, you can define whistling, and you can even define by playing to a certain degree, but you will never get a clear or definite picture of it. So that was my continuation to your remark, Hans. I don't know if you want to add something concluding, please.
Well, I used to have a teacher who was a self-proclaimed expert in whistling language. And in my sense, he tried to put clarity in this incredibly beautiful language consisting of just whistling between the hills of the island of La Gomera in the Canaries. And he sort of used Chomskyan analysis on that and put it clearly, and I think he even wrote a dissertation about it. And when I heard it, I haven't heard it live, but in recordings it was absolutely beautiful. And in his description, all beauty was eroded in that specific stimmung of stillness or staticness. So people would have read his dissertation, would say it's just a way of communicating, just zeros and ones. And the beauty of the whistling, the astonishing, incredible harmonies, were then absolutely gone or rejected. Sounds like Steven Pinker says that singing is parasitic on language. I think it's definitely not true. Beauty is connected to this. It is deeply inherent. Yes, it is contradicted, but also complementary, making it whole, taking in both the paths and the wave. I thank you very much for your patience, and this concludes today's lecture of Maurice Merleau-Ponty.
Thank you,
very much.
thank you.